So good morning, everybody. So it is now 11, sorry, in Central European time. So we'll be starting the webinar shortly. We have about 150 registered participants. So we will wait still for a little bit to let people connect for 1 or 2 minutes. Maybe before starting, I will present the speakers who will be participating in this webinar today, presenting the main trends for geothermal heating and cooling as of the end of 2020, following the publication of the EGEC Geothermal Market Report 2020. So we will have first Miklos Entik, presenting notably the geothermal technology, the specific focus on geothermal drilling, notably, and innovation in the drilling sector. And then we will have Noel Canto presenting from HUSNOSA, presenting the one of the latest and most innovative recent projects for heating and cooling, especially in Spain, where geothermal heating and cooling is still an emerging technology, but with a very interesting potential. We now have a little more than 50 people connected, so I will start softly my presentation, and hopefully we will have people joining along the way. So first, we have in Europe more than 300 geothermal district heating and cooling projects operating today that are spread out in many different European countries. So you can see on this map, the blue dots represent existing geothermal heating and cooling capacity, and the red dots represent planned geothermal or projects in development. And what we can see very interestingly is that today a lot of the capacity is still quite concentrated. So Iceland, obviously a very, very important user of geothermal district heating and cooling. It represents almost 100% of the heat demand in the country, at least for non-isolated buildings. Then we have other big clusters like in Turkey, in the Paris Basin, in Hungary, and more generally the Pannonian Basin around Munich, and also more recently in the Netherlands. What we are seeing now with projects in development is an acceleration of the diversification of the areas that are looking to develop geothermal district heating and cooling. What we can see, for instance, is a lot of projects ongoing in Poland, where so far there were not that many projects operating and not that many recent developments, especially. Finland is looking to develop its first deep geothermal district heating and cooling projects, going with very deep wells and quite innovative developments. In Denmark, we have a renewed interest as part of a strategy to decarbonize heating and cooling very rapidly. Netherlands, as I already mentioned, it has been a very dynamic market for 10 years, very rapidly growing. Now we have the UK and Ireland that are also looking to commission their first, or not quite first, but ready to initiate a geothermal district and cooling market. So overall, what we see is a diversification in terms of geography, in terms of the type of reservoir that are being looked for development. I didn't mention Greece, I didn't mention Croatia or Switzerland, but a lot of countries are really looking to develop geothermal district heating and cooling, and we are seeing more and more integrated strategies and plans to do so. So this is a very positive trend. Also, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we could not report that many positive developments in 2020. A lot of projects were stopped, delayed, and there were very few projects that actually were commissioned during the year. But we can happily report broadly positive trends and diversification of the market overall. Now, this diversity in the European geothermal market typically translates in a lot of different type of temperature that can be used in the geothermal heating and cooling sector. So we have typically in several countries temperatures as low as 20 to 30 degrees that are fed into to use for geothermal district heating and cooling. And then we can also have temperatures as high as 100 and almost 70 degrees that can even be used for industrial processes. And in between, we have a whole range of applications, so district heating, low temperature, higher temperatures. We also have uses in the agricultural sector for fish farming, etc. So a lot of different uses of geothermal energy. We are seeing more diverse uses of geothermal appearing as well, and exploiting really a wider range of temperature at a wider range of depth as well. This was one of the observations we had in the previous EGEC market report, that really no depths and temperatures are no limiting criteria, at least for geothermal district heating and cooling. What we have seen between 2010 and 2020 is really an acceleration of the market and a transformation to some extent. So obviously Iceland and Turkey remained the leading market. So you can see here in blue the capacity that we were able to report 10 years ago, and now in red what was added since then. And so obviously Iceland really intensified its use of geothermal district heating and cooling. But what we see is typically countries like the Netherlands really appeared in this space. So yes, the Netherlands had very, very little use of geothermal district heating and is now the fifth largest country in terms of installed capacity, but also in terms of use, because Netherlands is quite interesting in terms of heat production, being a country where capacity factors for the geothermal heat projects are quite high, because it's almost exclusively to this day used for agricultural greenhouses, basically. Therefore, the plants are running almost 24/7, contrary to district heating and cooling for buildings, where typically we are following the heating loads, and in summer, obviously, there's less demand. Now what we are seeing is we have quite a few projects, I think more than 200 in development currently. And as we have seen, they are really spread out all across Europe. Almost half of these projects are to some extent in the construction phase. So 1/3 of it being in between the construction of the project or the construction of the district heating, so the projects being basically available and needing to be connecting to habitation or buildings to really deliver energy. About 10% are in the drilling phase, and then we have a quarter of projects that are in planning phase, and the remaining between the exploration and permitting phase. So what we really see is that we have means to accelerate planning, exploration, and especially permitting to really facilitate the development of projects and accelerate the deployment of these geothermal projects. What we expect is over the coming years, if things go smoothly, so if we don't have disturbance as we had in 2020 and to some extent in 2021, such as COVID-19, etc., if we have the right policies, if we to some extent adapt as well to permitting and planning for geothermal district heating, we might see really a very rapidly a doubling of the deployment rates for geothermal district heating and cooling, which might still increase at the end of the coming decade. Now looking at geothermal heat pumps, and we'll try to accelerate because I think time is running out a little bit. But we had a market that was not quite stable. We have seen a lot of decrease in several countries. Typically Poland, we had 14% decrease in sales between 2019 and 2020. This is also true in some other European markets. However, the overall geothermal heat pump market remains quite strong, with about 90 to 100,000 units sold in 2020, bringing the total number of heat pump installed in Europe to over 2 million, at about 2.1 million geothermal heat pumps. What we see really is that very few countries are concentrating the bulk of the sales and the bulk of the installed stock of geothermal heat pumps. So of the 2 million of heat pump installed in Europe, we have half of them between Sweden and Germany. And what we are seeing is really that all those markets has doubled over the past decade. So we used to have about 1 million heat pumps in 2010. We now have more than 2. What we have seen is over the decade, we have seen a decrease in the absolute amount of sales, with some notable examples. As you can see on the graph here on the left, we have a curve that shows the decrease of annual geothermal heat pump sales in France. And there we had a market that was at a peak of sales at about 20,000 units, that now really collapsed to about 10% of that. So this is really a dramatic decrease. We have seen a stabilization at this very low level of sales, which is on par with markets such as Belgium, which is about 1/6 of the size of France in terms of country. And really what we see is that this collapse of the geothermal market, geothermal heat pump market in France, was due to regulatory changes, unforeseen changes, and a lack of stability also in the permitting and support framework. So really, policy decisions and support schemes have a strong impact in the visibility of the market, in the capacity of the market to sustain itself and to consolidate until it reaches maturity. Another example, as we will see a little bit later, is Sweden, where on the contrary, we have had a progression of the geothermal heat pumps towards really strong market maturity, high penetration rates, and therefore a consolidated industry. Now looking also at the trends in the way we install geothermal heat pump system, we are typically drilling fewer wells. So this is data from very large heat pump systems. So obviously it might not translate directly to individual household heat pumps, but probably it's a general trend that we are drilling deeper wells. So we used to have wells at about 100 meters deep. Now they are typically 250 meters on average. And we used to have, for the same type of installation, about 200 wells, and now we drill less than 100. So really we see this shift towards deeper and fewer wells, which probably translates into it's much cheaper to go deeper and to drill fewer wells because you do not have to move the pad, etc., meaning we drill faster and more efficiently, therefore decreasing the cost of systems. This is a reflection of the importance of policy in really driving geothermal heat pump market. So we had in Sweden and Germany the only country that really either exceeded or are close to achieving their 2020 geothermal heat pump deployment targets adopted as part of the EU Renewable Energy Directive implementation. And these countries, as I mentioned, have the most heat pump, are among the biggest markets for geothermal heat pump development. Also are the countries where we have the highest degree of maturity because there was some degree of stability. Germany, the market also was not as strong as in Sweden, but still, despite similar early trends at the beginning of the decade with France, Germany remained a more stable geothermal market. Now these slides present a little bit the subsidy scheme that are available per country. What we can see is really it's quite diverse. We have some countries that tend to prefer focusing on multi-unit buildings, so typically things like apartment buildings, hospitals, etc. other that prefer to focus on single family houses. Some countries have both. We have very varying rates of coverage of the cost of the geothermal heat pump. So we don't have a very unified framework in Europe, which translates also in a market that is not quite consolidated. Now, if we look also at penetration rate for geothermal heat pump per households, what we see is really strong differences between countries. So a lot of European countries have fewer than 1% of households that are equipped with a geothermal heat pump. Even countries with actually quite important installed stock, such as Germany, have only between 2 and 1% of households that are actually equipped with a geothermal heat pump. Then on the contrary, we have countries like Sweden or Finland, where we have between 6 and 12%, so 6 for Finland and 12% of households for Sweden, where we have geothermal heat pumps, which is a quite high rate of penetration and really a highlight of the maturity of this technology, especially in a country where we have a lot of district heating, therefore limiting this number of individual systems. So now I will give the floor to Miklos to do his presentation. He will also have to leave fairly soon, so we will do a short Q&A right after his presentation. So already, if you have questions for him, don't hesitate to raise them in the question section or in the chat, or to raise your hand. So thank you all, and now Miklos, if you want to take the floor.
Yes. Good morning.
Yeah, we can see your screen. And maybe if you are able to put it in full screen.
Can you see my screen? Okay, good. And now it's the presentation on. I think it should swap like this.
Yeah, this is perfect.
Is it good now? Okay.
Yeah,
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Thomas, for the introduction and for your first presentation on the status of the geothermal district heating and cooling status in Europe. Well, today, at every market report we tackle a topic, and for this year's market report was the innovation in geothermal drilling. As you know, geothermal drilling, it's a large part of the capex of deep geothermal. I'm speaking here of deep geothermal, targeting large geothermal district heating systems. And then it was good to speak a bit about these innovations, or I must say technology, oil and gas technology transfer towards geothermal in order to maximize heat production. Why do we need innovation in well architectures? Essentially, because the heat we need to extract per unit doublet needs to be higher because the demand is higher, and we need to optimize between the efficiency of the geothermal doublet and the capex, which is the expenditure to it. Well, this is a bit the outline of what I'm going to talk to you today. I'm going to present you the latest work which has been done all over Europe. It's well, examples, of course, are taken from work which has been essentially achieved in France, but I can report you that progresses have been done in the Netherlands and also in Germany with respect to, in the Netherlands with respect to the composite wells, and in Germany with respect to the radial wells. However, no official reporting has been done by these countries. I inquired them before writing the chapter in the market report whether they can give examples, but unfortunately we couldn't access just publications. Well, I'm going to speak to you also about other solutions which are related to drilling, which are completions, which are more and more coming into the picture when we are speaking about dual production of reservoirs. So we need to exploit simultaneously two types of reservoirs. In the conclusions, of course, I will tackle the well performance and the key issues in reservoir petrophysics evaluation, which is related to drilling. However, it's often neglected whilst developing resources in deep sedimentary basins, because we most of the time we assume that we just cross the sedimentary basins, and then we just harness the geothermal resource which is beneath the earth. Well, here it's a summary slides of all the well architectures which are available, which have been, let's say, promoted in the past. I have not spoken of the classical 2 vertical wells drilled from 2 different platforms, spaced at a certain distance in order to avoid thermal breakthrough. I'm starting this resume, this summary, by presenting you the classical deviated wells, which are drilled from the single platform, and they are intercepting the reservoir at a certain depth, vertical depths between 1600 and 1700 meters, and they have an open hole completion characteristic to the Doga reservoir, or they have a wire wrap screen completion, which is characteristic more to the clastic reservoirs. On the bottom of the screen, you will see the first ever achieved, let's say, concept of subhorizontal well, which I'm going to detail it later. And on the right hand side, you will see the design of the multi-radial wells, which have been recently also achieved in France by another operator. But we have done some work on it, on design, not specifically the way it has been achieved. Well, I'm just giving you an example. Why do we need a subhorizontal well when we already have had an exploitation which was in the Paris Basin, which is it's a Doga Battonian reservoir, which is a very, very productive reservoir, but it exhibits zones with lower transmissivity, below 10 decimeters. And the objective of this project, which was in the south of Paris, in Cachan, which is already surrounded. What you can see, these are all the doublets which are surrounding the Cachan perimeter. You can see that we are already very crowded, and it was necessary to design new wells in order to replace the existing wells which were producing since 1984. What we have to note that this district heating system was supplied since 1984 by geothermal heat, and by four wells. That means 2 doublets, and the 2 doublets were having a capacity of 360 cubic meters an hour in total of heat supply. By achieving a new subhorizontal well, where you can see the well design, the well construction profile here, and on this side the trajectories and azimuths, and on this side the offset well trajectories and also the design ones. This is the modeling which has brought us, and what has been achieved. The objective was to replace by one single well the 1 doublet, the 2 doublets, and this has been carried out successfully by deploying a strategy which was adopted by the fact that for the first well we have adopted just a constant angle trajectory of 84 degrees, which we have monitored by logging while drilling, by XRD, XRF analysis, by mud logging, and then we have applied also geosteering. That means we had to keep the tool in the same layer for a while in order to increase the inflow surface into the well. So this, I mean, by what our fellows from the oil and gas industry achieved, this proved to be very rewarding, because today the doublet is producing at 450 cubic meters per hour, which over exceeded the capacity of the 2 existing doublets with a reasonable capex. The well of the second well was much more tricky to be drilled because it was going on opposite way, that was going uphill on the dip, and then the planning and the geosteering of this well, as you can see, it was much more complicated because we had to keep the tool in a metric size layers for a long time, and it was the most challenging well because the transmissivity, it was even lower as in the production well, and then it was meant to be an injection well. So of course we succeeded well on the production well, but then the question was in the geosteering of the second well, which was much more sensitive, to do it in a way that it can take off the production of the production well, so as injector. So as you can see that this we had deep varying angles between 1 to 5 degrees, and then we had to track layers which were of metric size. In total we had 32 variations of angle and dip by geosteering. So this has been conducted by a whole team of geoscientists, by drilling engineers, and by geosteering teams in order to achieve that. That was the first ever thing done in geothermal in the Paris Basin, where we have had a quite good knowledge, but not sufficient to do that. Of course, after doing geosteering, we need to do very good reservoir petrophysics characterization. This has been done by Schlumberger on this project, and then here is the flow chart from how to go from drilling and geosteering by good analysis of nuclear magnetic resonance, which could give you a broad information about rock quality, productive segments, and porosity and permeability, and rock heterogeneity. This was really a rewarding exercise, which brought in a wealth of data for future projects, and how to do future projects successfully by successful geonavigation and reservoir characterization in order to maximize heat production. Well, the second example will come to you in presenting you the multi-drain concept, in which we could demonstrate that well, you could see on my previous slide that we have had a conventional single drain, which would give an accumulated length of 15 meters pressure depletion at a high flow rate. This is also in a very low transmissivity, below 10 decimeter environment at 38 bars. Would we pass for a multi-radial three drain system, with one which would stay at 45 degrees and two at 70 degrees, then we would just have 1 bar gain. However, we will have accumulated length of 190 meters, and then should we go keeping here, it's not so visible on this slide, but keeping here a constant angle of 80 degrees and achieving accumulated drain length of 240 meters, we would gain approximately 12 bars in the pressure depletion, and also we will have a limited difference interference impact, as it is shown in this modeling exercise of multi-radial well versus conventional well architecture performance. Well, this has been a similar architecture, not the one which has been shown to you, has been achieved already in France, which is not yet in service. So I cannot report to you about that because nothing has been disclosed by the operator so far. Well, the other let's say innovation, which is, well, I would say innovation, but it dates back now to 26 years. The first well, the anti-corrosion well concept, which has been achieved in Melun-l'Almont. It was a fiberglass relined well, which was drilled as a conventional well with steel prop casing, but in a large diameter, and inside we have introduced fiberglass liner, which is not cemented. It is in free suspension in on the lower part and in compression on the upper part. And well, the precursor, which I mentioned you from 26 years ago now, it has only one. It had only one casing, and in 2018 we achieved the replica of that well, but with a pumping chamber. Well, the result was that the well was performing so good, and the pressure losses were so low in the fiberglass that the pump was no longer needed. However, well, just to give you a comparison, that the old well, which was in production in Bonneuil-sur-Marne at that time, was capable of giving 150 cubic meters per hour. Now the new well, the fiberglass completed well, gives 280 cubic meters per hour from the same reservoir. The distance between the impacts is about 100 meters. So we have targeted the well at the same place. Well, the difficulty of achieving such a well, it has we need to drill a large diameter until the top of the reservoir. That means until in 17.5 and case it in 13.38 on the top of the reservoir, in order to accommodate a 958 fiberglass liner inside of this 13.38. And of course, the upper part should be in 20 inches in order to accommodate the 13.38 fiberglass liner. Well, the advantage of this well is that it's zero maintenance well, and it does not need a downhole chemical injection line in order to protect the casing from corrosion and scaling, as it is most of the case in many wells, not only in France but also in Europe, and it can last for very long time, as already practice has been proven. Well, this well has been put in service in 2018, and it operates stably since then. This is another concept which will be developed soon in order to produce simultaneously two aquifers. Which one aquifer is the Albion aquifer, and the second aquifer is the Neocomian. The Neocomian is known as a artesian aquifer, so it's going to be produced by the annulus, by artesian flow, and the Albion aquifer, which is shallower, is going to be produced by a packer system from inside in order to with a pump. So, and then of course the production of these two waters is not going to be mixed, so each water will give his own heat to his own heat exchanger, and it will be reinjected in the well. It will be reinjected in the well in that respective reservoir. The only problematic today with these reservoirs, the Albion and the Neocomian, these are clastic reservoirs, and they exhibit quick clogging. That means the injectivity of these wells are degrading very quickly due to particle migration and also internal cake formation. Well, a research program is ongoing on the topic, and we are confident that these solutions will be adopted soon. Well, this is another technology borrowed from the oil and gas industry, is the expandable liner. Well, as you may see that more and more we have to target deeper reservoirs because the existing reservoirs are either not sufficient as productivity, or we need to target deeper reservoirs to complement the heat capacity of the existing reservoir with deeper reservoir which have higher temperature. This has been a design which has been designed and also almost executed. I must say almost, because there was a technical problem and it could not be achieved, to exploit to be able to exploit a deep reservoir, the Triassic sandstone reservoir in the Paris area, and give also the opportunity to exploit it by a dual completion. The idea was to put an expandable liner in order to maintain the same drift between the completion of the Dogo reservoir and the top of the Triassic reservoir, so we would not lose a diameter and not lose flow rate, because by reducing of the diameter of a well, we will lose flow rate. What we should retain from geothermal exploration or exploitation, that we are not producing via tubing, we are producing by full bore from every reservoir, and the geothermal water is in contact with the casing. Therefore, well integrity is crucial. Well, this is the application which has been designed through the expandable liner solution, but it has not been implemented because this exploratory program did not succeed. We worked closely to Schlumberger for having a dual production from the Dogger and from the Trias. There have been two systems proposed: the dual parallel and the dual concentric electrosubmersible pump, and this has been a big challenge because it has been never done. It is very often done in oil and gas, but has been never done in geothermal. And for this target flow rates, which we were targeting 400 cubic meters an hour, we were targeting 150 cubic meters per hour from the Trias and 300 cubic meters per hour from the Dogger. So achieving this with two pumps by mixing then the waters, that was quite a challenge for all the designers which were involved in this project. And we were very happy of having this at shelf now, and the technology being available. That means that in the future this type of application can be easily achieved. Well, I'm coming now to the conclusions because I think I'm exceeding my time. Well, for subhorizontal well architectures, if we compare the capex for the previous doublets, previous application where we had to deal with two doublets, producing in total 350 cubic meters per hour, that means 40 gigawatt thermal per year, the capex to remake the same would be between 14 and 15 million euros. But the COP of the system would be only 9. And then the new one, what has been achieved with 450 cubic meters an hour and the capacity of between 60 and 65 gigawatt thermal a year, we achieve a COP of 20 to 28 with an expenditure of 12 to 13 million euros. So, well, there is a reduction in cost, obviously, but we have a huge increase in performance. If we look at the multi-radial well architectures, this I told you already, more inclined we land on the top of the reservoir, and quicker we can space the drains in order to avoid interference, not only between of the top of the race, but we should certainly avoid interference at the end within the drain. So we should not intersect the same reservoir twice. We can achieve substantial gain in the pressure depletion, which will lead ultimately to gain in the OPEX of the well, of the electricity consumption, in order to produce high flow rate for a low transmissivity reservoir. While the combined steel fiberglass free annulus well architecture, it secures well integrity. I mean the well forever, low pressure losses. So it is recommended most of the cases when we are dealing with hostile thermochemical environments. Well, the dual completion, of course, the design presented in the last two slides, we could see that we could achieve 400 cubic meters per hour if we have the upper reservoir, which is at 64 degrees, the lower reservoir at 75, and having a flow rate individual, we would achieve, of course, a gain in temperature of 4 degrees if we would add the production of the Trias to it. Well, in terms of evaluation of the reservoir, which is often neglected while designing and executing a well, it is very important to have logging while drilling all over the well. For the large, it has been proven that we can do efficient tractor-driven conveyed logging tools on 1 kilometer length of the well. and we can obtain reliable geomechanical and reservoir parameters. And of course, what is important in that we deploy the geochemical analysis in order to characterize the facies in which we are drilling, the type of sedimentation. So we are steering our well or our drill bit in the good layer, which has the best chance to be productive. Well, I thank you for your attention. Please ask your questions online. I'm with you for a minute or two, but then I need to leave you and catch a flight. Ask your questions and by chat or by email, and I will be very happy to answer you the questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Miklos, for the presentation. We have already two questions. So one, I think you already answered in your presentation from Antoine Damore, asking if we could have an idea of the overall cost of the wells, given the expensive tools used on hole. So I think you give this information during the presentation. And another one is from Rob de Vogelaar, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right, asking about the maximum temperature of the brine that can be possible when using a fiberglass riser.
Yes, for the fiberglass application, we plan the wells up to 90 degrees, 95 degrees Celsius.
Okay, thank you. I think there's no more question at this time. If we have a question following up, we will send them to you, and then you will be able to reply as a follow-up to the webinar. Okay. So I think you have to leave now.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. I wish you a good webinar for the next, and see you soon. Goodbye.
Yeah, thank you. Goodbye. Now we will have the presentation from Noel. So I invite you to switch on your webcam and share your screen. So Noel will present us a project that is using geothermal from a former coal plant. So Noel, floor is yours. Actually, we still can see your. All right, now we can see. Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Noel Canto-Emil. I am the head of the Department of Innovation of UNOSA. My speech tackles the issue of geothermal projects developed using mine water. Before going in detail, I like to start with a brief outline of my company. So, UNOSA is our own state coal mining company that was founded in 1967 by the integration of coal mining private companies. And from the beginning, it was focused on coal extraction and either underground or open pit mining, and also energy production. We are located in the north of Spain, in Asturias. Asturias is a region in the north of Spain with a strong tradition in coal mining and also in iron and steel industry. Nowadays, UNOSA, as many other coal mining companies in Europe, has undergone a strong process of reduction in the number of employees and also in the number of coal mines in operation. And nowadays we have just only one underground mine in operation, a power station that is equipped with a CO2 capture plant, washery, that is to say a treatment plant, and some diversification activities. Among them, and the most important one, is the geothermal projects developed using mine water. So we started with geothermal projects because we wanted to look for a new use for the mines and also for the water inside the mines. When we close a mine, we stop pumping, and the mine is flooded, and the water level rises up to a certain level, a level that we call a safety level, that we wanted to keep in order not to damage buildings and infrastructure of the towns that are close to the mine. So it implies that we have permanent costs associated to this pumping. And geothermal projects is a way of trying to offset in some way these pumping expenses, and at the same time it's a way to develop renewable energies and to create jobs associated with these green technologies and so on. So the projects that geothermal projects that we have in UNOSA nowadays are linked to two shafts, two collieries. The first one is Barredo Colliery, and the other one is El Fondón Colliery. Barredo Colliery was the first. We started with all the projects there. It's a mine that is in the middle of the town. The town is called Mieres. Mieres is one of the main towns of the mining area in Asturias. It has about 40,000 people, more or less, so it's not a very large town. But it has a lot of potential clients very close to the mine. It is why this mine is very interesting in terms of developing geothermal projects. So we started in 2000, 2008, 2009 to study this kind of projects, and we developed 3 projects that started to be in operation in 2014 and 2016. These 3 projects are the Hospital of Mieres, so we provide heating and cooling to the hospital, also heating and cooling to the research building of the University of Oviedo, that has some facilities in this town, in Mieres, and also to Asturian Energy Foundation, to the building of the Asturian Energy Foundation. So these 3 projects are independent. They have in common just only the fact that they have the same source for the heat, you know, is the shaft, but they are not connected, so they are independent. But later on, we decided that it was a very good idea to develop a district heating in order to increase the efficiency of the system, and we started to work on that. And in 2020, started to be in operation the district heating that we call Barredo Colliery district heating. With this district heating, we provide heating to a high school, to 2 residential buildings, 2 blocks of apartments, and also to the main building of the University of Oviedo there in Mieres. After that, and with the same idea, we started, and we are now trying to finishing the El Fondón district heating. This is the same idea that with Barredo Colliery. Here in El Fondón district heating, that is developed in a city more or less the same size as Mieres, we provide energy to a block of apartment, a public health center, a hotel, a geriatric center, and also a sports center. And also we have a plan to develop geothermal projects in other mines in the mining area of Asturias. So sometimes it's not very easy because, okay, you have the mine, you have the resource, you have everything, but you don't have clients. So it's very important to have clients and clients close to the mine. So because the towns associated to the mining area are not very large, so Mieres and Langreo are the largest one. So in Mieres we have Barredo Colliery, and in Langreo we have El Fondón Colliery, and we are talking about 4,000 people. So it's not too large. So and the other towns are even not so large. So it's very difficult to find potential clients, but we are working on that. We think that in the next years we will develop more district heatings in the same way that we have in these 2 towns. So let's focus now Barredo Colliery. Barredo Colliery, as I said, is a shaft that is in the middle of this town, Mieres. You have here in the left part a scheme, a picture where you can see the development of the geothermal facilities. This is a picture of the south part of the town. In purple, you have the first facilities, the hospital, one of the buildings of the university, and Asturian Energy Foundation. And in orange, you have the district heating, Barredo district heating. On the right part, you have some characteristics of the mine. And I'd like to just to talk just only about the amount of water that we are obliged to pump every year in order to keep the water level. That this amount is very large. See here is 4 million of cubic meters. In total, in Unosa, we have to pump out water from the mines 35 hectometers cubic per year. So it's a huge amount of money, and you have to spend a lot of money. So the water temperature associated to this mine, to the water that we have to pump out is 23 degrees centigrade, and it's very constant during the whole year. So here you have a very simple scheme about the 3 initial facilities that we developed in Barredo Colliery. As I said, are individual facilities. They are not connected, and they have in common just only that they take the resource, they take the water from the same place, that is the Barredo Colliery. So the way of working is very simple. We pump out the water, and before going to the river, we pass through this water through a heat exchanger, and we transfer this heat to a closed circuit of clean water that goes to the facility, for instance, to the hospital. In the hospital, we have the 3 heat pumps that are in charge of raising the temperature of the heating system of the hospital or cooling the hospital. It depends on the needs of the facility. So all of them work in the same way. So as I mentioned before, developing these first facilities, we thought that it was a very good idea to develop a district heating. So we started to work on that, and we have this district heating developed and in operation from 2020. The way of working is quite different from the others. So we have 2 circuits. We have two heat pumps connected in series and counterflow, and 2 circuits, the evaporator circuit and the condenser circuits. So once we pump out the water and we pass the water through the heat exchangers, we transfer this heat to the evaporator circuit. With the evaporators of the heat pumps, let's say we extract the heat, and we give this heat to the condenser circuit that is in charge of rising the temperature of the system. So we have, as you can see in the slide, we can summarize that we have 2 lines. One line of high temperature that goes to the secondary school and to the university, and another line of low temperature that goes to the blocks of apartments. So we have these 2 different lines because the heating system, for instance, the heating system of the secondary school at the University of Oviedo is prepared just only to admit water at high temperature. And on the other hand, the blocks of apartments are newer, so they are ready to admit water at low temperature. You can heat these blocks of apartment without providing high temperature. So we have, as I said, we have another district heating that we are finishing nowadays, and we want to be ready by the end of the year, just to provide heating in the next season. In this case, we are in another town very close to the other. This town is called Langreo. As I said, it's about more or less the same size, 40,000 people living there. And we have many clients, many facilities where we can provide heating. So we are in the first phase. We thought that we think that in the future there will be more buildings and more facilities that can join the district heating. But nowadays we are finishing just to give heat to a sports center, a block of apartment, a hotel and geriatric center, a public health center. So the temperature of the water is more or less the same. It's about 23 degrees centigrade during the whole year. And we have to pump out water about 1.7 hectometers cubic per year. So the scheme, the way of working is more or less the same as in Barredo Corridor. We have to extract the water from the shaft and to transfer this heat to the evaporator circuit, and from there to transfer this heat to the condenser circuit, and from there to the different facilities. In this case, we have to provide energy at high temperature in all the cases. So in this slide, we have a summary of the main figures of the three projects. So as you can see, for instance, in the table, in the first table, the hospital of Mieres is the most important one in terms of thermal energy supplied or in cooling supply. And also you have more data about the district heating, with the thermal that we have to supply for the district heating of Barredo in the second middle of the slide, and in El Fondón district heating. So we have another part of the table where you can see the CO2 emission reduction in each facility. I'd like to point out that we use energy, renewable energy, for the electricity that we need in the facilities. So it means that the reduction of the CO2 emission reduction, it is much higher than if we use conventional electricity. So you have some figures about the investment and the subsidies received from the European Union to develop this project. So I'd like to say also that the Barredo Corridor district heating was awarded in the 6th Global District Heating Energy Climate Awards in 2019 by the International Energy Agency, and also was selected to take part in our report at the European level in 2021, this year, and also was selected as an endorsed nominee for the European Geothermal Award also this year. So thank you very much for your attention. That's all.
Thank you, Noel, for this very good presentation. It was very interesting to follow. There are a few questions already in the chat. I will take them in order. The first one is from Toke van den Hemel, who is asking, why is water put back into the river and not into the aquifer after it has been used?
Okay, so we have in Asturias. Asturias is in Spain, but it's not. The north part of Spain is different from the rest. So in terms of climate and so on. So in Asturias it rains a lot. So you have water is a problem. and we have to pump out the water from the shaft. You can see the figures of the amount of water that we have to pump every year. So you have to get rid of the water to keep the circuit of the water. So it rains, it filters into the underground, and you have to pump it to go to the river. So this is what we do without geothermal projects. We have to pump out. That's good to keep the water level and goes to the river in order also to keep the amount of water of the rivers. So this is what we have to keep. There is no advantage for us to take the water and to putting it back into the aquifer. If we were talking about a closed aquifer, and if you extract water from the aquifer, you dry the aquifer. So in this case, it's okay. We can think about a different solution. But in our case, that all the galleries are connected with the underground and with the surface, and the water comes from the rain and goes underground, and this water has to go to the river again. So we have to keep more or less the circuit, and there is, as I said, there is no advantage for us to keep this water and to go back with this water to the aquifer.
All right, thank you. So there's another question regarding the coefficient of performance of the heat pumps, especially when you start with 20 degrees water and then you are going to 65 degrees temperature for the district heating. Yeah, what is the coefficient of performance? And the question is also whether there is an electrical heating booster in the system. And yeah, the question is from Antoine Damory.
Okay, the performance of the heat pumps, of course, it depends on the temperature that you want to produce. It's there is not a constant performance, but we are around 3.5, between 3.5 and 4. In case of we produce water at low temperature, 3.5, 3.6, 7, 8, for instance, let's say between 3.5 and 4. And in case of we produce at high temperature, is lower, it's 1 point lower. So maybe 2.5 or 2.8 more or less. These are the performance. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So two last questions, and since we're at the end of the webinar, we are just going through these two to end. One of them you already answered from Dragostin Catalin, asking what is the source of water in the mine. So I suppose it's rainwater essentially. And one from Bruno Loré, asking, considering the level of temperature needed for the end users, whether you could precise the final share of geothermal energy compared to electricity in the final supply. So I suppose you also somewhat answered with the COP, but if you want to elaborate a little.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Sorry, please.
Yeah. So the question is.
The last question. Sorry.
So because there is such a high spread between the energy from the temperature from the mine and the temperature of delivery, whether you had an estimate of the share of energy that is geothermal and the share that is electricity, but I suppose this relates to the COP anyway.
So, I cannot, I don't understand you. I think that the audit is not okay, but the question, I don't know what is. I don't know what are you saying about electricity, because I don't have good sound nowadays. So could you or write in somewhere in the chat, and I can read it?
You should have received it in the chat, yes.
So Which question is it? Consider the level of temperature. Could you precise the final shares? Level of temperature. Consider level of temperature. So I don't know what the question, you know.
Yeah. Basically, the question.
So I think you can answer. So in terms of the performance, you know, with the ratio of performance, how much megawatts from water and how much megawatts from electricity. Yeah, with the share of with the data of the performance, you can more or less have this data. You know, so if we are talking about a performance of, let's say, 3.5, in case of we are providing at low temperature, so you can more or less have an idea about the megawatts from electricity and megawatts from geothermal energy. And if we provide energy at a high temperature, so we are talking about 2.5. So I think that could be, I don't know if it is okay for you.
Yeah, that should be. So essentially, basically dividing the total amount of energy.
I don't have the figure, exact figure here. We can calculate it, yeah, but just to have a general idea, I think that you can more or less know the answer.
All right. So yeah, indeed, it's linked to the coefficient of performance. So basically, we can divide by the COP, the total amount of energy, and we have a good idea. So thank you for your presentation. So we were running a little bit over time, but thank you for this case study. Thank you all for joining into this webinar. We will be sharing the presentation and the recording of the webinar in the coming days. And I invite you to consult the detailed EGEC market report. So thank you all, and wishing you a good day. Bye.
Bye.